the way the system is, like the electoral college makes it such that like our votes don't even count as much as our votes are supposed to count. So I think that, again, we have to really talk about systemic and institutional change.
Being in Alabama, and especially if you're a little bit more liberal, a little bit more Democrat, what's like that experience like there?
I mean, I really feel like that a lot of times, like a lot of black people and white people in the South just have to spend more time together because that's how the South was built. And so people, for the most part, like you can't run for office. Up until recently, there was no idea you could run for office in Alabama and be a Democrat. But then it used to be you couldn't be a Republican and run for office in Alabama because the party is switched. You know what I'm saying? Like, so in that way, it sort of means that like party doesn't mean much there, because if you want to run for office, you pretty much have to be a Republican. So in that way, politics doesn't come up until people make it come up. Like people just sort of talk to each other and hang out, and you do this and I do that. And, and there's not really, like, when I go down there are definitely times, because I feel like a lot of times the fashion I would bring from the North wouldn't have got there yet. Or when I had dreadlocks, they hadn't gotten dreadlocks yet. So there would be like, there's a lot of staring.
Oh,
and then, so then like 10 years later, when I'd cut my dreadlocks off, suddenly they had dreadlocks, like, I mean, it was just sort of like, oh, look at you guys. So there is certainly sometimes a tension, but also I was in Mobile, which is the third largest city in Alabama, which means 300,000 people. But it really, like, I'm taking my wife there, my kids there. If you separate out the political element, it's just like, man, this shrimp is good. Like it really gets very like, man, can I have some more gumbo? Like, and people are friendlier than they are in the North. Like people will ask you how you doing and wait for a response. Like it's just I really, like, it's only as an adult. I used to hate to go there when I was a kid just because I hated having to like travel. I didn't think I liked it because I was from the North. But as an adult, I've really come to enjoy it. It has been made more problematic in the Trump era because now those political conversations are more out loud and on people's T-shirts, and you see the red MAGA hats, and it's just like, come on, can't we just go back to the old days where I didn't know if you hated me because you made good pie? You know what I mean? Like, why do we have to? So Trump has definitely made it less fun to go down there.
Well, as I'm sure you know from both living in the North and as well as the South, is that Northerners, I think, part of the reason why the South stays so dug into certain traditions, as racist as they may be, or even just certain things, is because people in the North do have a tendency to look down and to denigrate people who are from the South. And I think that only makes them cling harder to things that they really don't want to be associated with, but just out of pure stubbornness. They're just like, we're not going to let you Northerners talk down to us. And Alabama, I feel like Alabama and Mississippi, there's the South, and then there's Alabama and Mississippi. It's like they get probably the worst stereotypes. What is it that people like myself, again, I grew up in Detroit, I grew up in the North my whole life. I've lived mostly in the North my whole life. What is it we don't get about a place like Alabama that we need to try to better understand?
That it's not that it the most open racism I've ever experienced in my life has not come from the South. Like the most, like walking down the street or like walking into places, like the most sort of like in my face racism has always been something that I've experienced in the North. So a lot of the racism of the South, I'm not trying to say it's not there. A lot of it is really institutional and structural, and about, like, again, about how the cities are run. And yes, there are times where horrible hate crimes happen, but just the regular old walking around like, did that guy just call me a nigger? That's Northern shit. Like that's like, or worse, did that guy just treat me like a nigger? Like that's stuff in the North. Like that's just like, I never got kicked out of any place in the South. I got thrown out of a record store in Chicago when I was 16 or 15 or 16. I got told to leave a coffee shop in Berkeley, California, because I was talking to my wife. Like, you know what I mean? So like, because they thought she's white and he's black. That's not a good conversation. So all that racist stuff that the people put on the South, for me, has always been more a segment of, has been more a function of life outside of the South.
As somebody who has traveled the country as much as you have, I mean, obviously we have a really big election coming up this year. Where does your sense of optimism stand when it comes to what will happen in November? Are you scared, optimistic? Like, where do you stand?
So I thought I don't know. I thought of this the other day that like, first of all, people should stop putting all their hopes and dreams on election day, because no matter what happens, this train has pulled out of the station and is running out of control, and it's going to take more. And also, Joe Biden doesn't take over on election day. And the worst thing I think this country could have is a lame duck Trump presidency. If he knew he had 2 months to just really fuck it all up, I think he would really spend 2 months fucking it all up. So that's one thing. Yeah, Joe Biden is like, sorry. If your tire blows out in your car and you put the donut on, you're happy to have the donut, but you cannot drive for the rest of your car's life on that donut. And to me, Joe Biden feels like the donut. That like we need to get this, the tire's blown out. Let's put the donut on the car, and then let's talk about getting 4 new tires. Like I just feel like that's how I feel about it. Like I think that Angela Davis, I think, basically said that, but in a more smarter way. That like we need to get this car. We need to change the tire on this car. And Joe Biden is not the forever change, so he's not going to change all the structures and institutions. But I think hopefully he will give us the ability to take a pause and start to work on changing the structures and institutions.
Well, I guess to further your car analogy, like right now it feels like we're riding on bent rims. That the car could completely just go, just fuck itself up at like any moment.
Yeah.
And we're always on
the car is upside down. Yeah, the car is upside down on fire, and so I don't, and it's not, and so I think a lot of, but also I think the system, I also get sort of bothered by the fact that even with the way the system is, like the Electoral College makes it such that like our votes don't even count as much as our votes are supposed to count. So I think that, again, we have to really talk about systemic and institutional change. Gerrymandering, I think it's why it's important for everybody to fill out the census, makes it so that black votes don't count as much as white folks. So I think anytime I start to get a little bit hopeful, I have to remind ourselves that the system is in place to make sure that even if we elected President Angela Davis, there's only so much that President Angela Davis can do.
Mm-hmm. Have you allowed yourself to think about what it might feel like or how you might react if we do get another 4 years of this?
I don't know that America survives. When I say survives, there will still be a place called the United States of America. But I think in the same way, there's still a city called Rome, but there's not the Roman Empire. In the same way, there's still England, but there's not the British Empire. I think the whole thing shifts. Me and you were both old enough to remember the Soviet Union. Russia's still there, but it ain't the Soviet Union anymore. Things have, so I think for me, it's like, I think that if we get 4 more years of Trump, that things will be pushed, that not only will institutions really just get more calcified and hard on people, but the rest of the world will be like, we don't go there no more. That we stay out of that neighborhood. And I think, like recently when they were talking about banning international students from coming to America if they were enrolled only online, it's like the reason why this country got to whatever kind of good place it got was because we were welcoming of the smartest people from other countries to come in here, learn, make relationships, invent some new technology, become a billionaire. You know what I mean? I mean, it's sort of like, that's a lot of why this country, it doesn't come from this country. A lot of it does, but a lot of it comes from outside this country. But the minute this country becomes a neighborhood you don't go to no more, then a lot of that innovation and information and education we lose to other countries. So I think that if we get 4 more years of Trump, that might be a wrap on America as far as I can tell.
Look, as it is, because of our ineffective, wholly incompetent response to COVID-19, other countries are really not trying to fuck with us anyway. And I was like, it's the height of irony that, he spent all that time discussing a wall and like, how we need to block off other people from the world. The world ain't fucking with us right now. So you got your wish. And you didn't even need billions of dollars to build a wall because the rest of the world has put a wall around us. Like, you guys stay your infected asses in your own country.
Yeah.
Right?
They built a wall out of American passports. If you got an American passport, stay over there. like
Right.
I mean, and it's messing up regular shit. Like, I mean, I just heard that like the Toronto Blue Jays are talking about playing in Buffalo, New York, because they can't. Teams won't be able to go into Canada to play baseball. Like, I mean, it's just like, like you ruined baseball. Do you understand?
It's so also messed up.